Good afternoon, guys. Good afternoon, and welcome to today's edition of The Law and You. I'm your host, yours truly, attorney at law, Shellon Washington, licensed in the state of New York to practice law, also in my home country, Guyana, and in the Twin Island of Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome, guys. Today I bring you an edition relating to annulment. For those of you who saw my program last week, you would have seen that I spoke about annulment last week and what are the types or ways in which you can annul a marriage. Now, this week I'm going to continue a little bit more about annulment because I know it's a very interesting topic and it's something that a lot of people are not aware that it actually exists, because most people tend to go for a divorce, even in cases where it is obvious that the marriage should be annulled. So I think it's important for me to continue to spread awareness of this form of kind of erasing a marriage and starting afresh and kind of making it as if it never ever existed. And I think this is most appropriate for some people. And there are certain circumstances where it will not be warranted or it's probably not a good idea. One of the ways or one of the circumstances in which an annulment will not be appropriate, which I think people know, is in the context of where you get married to somebody and that person is going to file for a green card for you. For those of you who've seen 90 Days Fiance, there is an actual episode where this actually happened, where a woman actually married a man. I think he was from Tunisia. She brought him here to the United States, and then the marriage did not work out. She tried to annul that marriage, but I don't think that worked out because the marriage was already consummated. And there were other things. For instance, their life was publicly on television. So kind of like people saw him living there. People kind of like knew what was happening in that relationship. So, and the fraud was difficult for that woman to establish. I think she tried to annul it based on the realm of fraud, but she was doing it for the wrong reason. She was doing it out of pure spite, and she did not want that man to gain his green card. And I think that's one of the ways or one of the grounds on which you do not want to get an annulment, because some people try to do it out of pure spite where they know that person is relying on them for a green card and they don't want to give them that green card, so they try to annul the marriage. So I will strike that one off of the list of one of the reasons that you should try to get a annulment. And you guys do know is a plethora of cases, if we should start to comb through them, that we will find where people finesse their spouse into being in something or into marrying them, but it was done for the sole purpose of getting that green card, and there's no other reason behind it. So if you know of anybody who got into a form of marriage just for that purpose, and you can actually prove, you can have actually establish that that was the sole purpose and the person never really intended to be in an actual relationship with you, then yes, that's one of the most appropriate grounds. But you obviously have to have evidence. You have to have everything that could prove and establish that it was never entered into in good faith and the other party never intended to be an actual spouse to you. They never intended to love you. They never intended you to treat you the way a wife or a husband should treat a partner. And though that is a pretty much one of the safest ground, if there was never any intent, the lack of intent to create a binding marriage. Is like some people marry in, just like I said last week, some people go to Atlantic City, Las Vegas, and they enter into these voidable or void marriages, and then afterwards they have to annul it, because a lot of times people consume alcohol, and alcohol tends to impair your judgment, impair your ability to function effectively or to think with clarity. So that's one of the situations there. But if you're doing it out of just pure spite, because you're saying, okay, I don't want my partner to get an annulment. I want to annul this marriage because I don't want my partner to get a green card. That person married me. It didn't work out, but I want to annul that marriage. That's not a good ground. Just because you want to spite someone to prevent them from getting a green card. On the other hand, it could be used in the reverse manner. So, for instance, if you married somebody to get a green card, the person disappears on you. I wouldn't state some of the reasons why these people disappears on you, but let's say you marry someone. Let's say you hope that it was going to be a real marriage, and then the person just vanishes on you, and then you wanted to use that marriage to get a green card, but the person is gone and you can't find them. What the best thing would be in that case is to annul that marriage. So it will be that, because for the purposes of applying for a green card, it doesn't look good at all on you to have multiple marriages and then you put this on your application. Because at some point, if you end up with the wrong USCIS officer, they're gonna start asking questions like, why did you have so many marriages since you arrived in the United States? What was the purpose of these marriages? So I think in a case where people marry someone, right, and let's say for argument's sake, right, you marry someone and you're thinking, okay, this is going to be the person that's going to apply for my green card. My intentions are pure. I want to be in a relationship with this person. And you go ahead and you marry the person. And let's say, for argument's sake, it just didn't work. The person just vanishes. They ghost you. You can't find them. You try calling them, you try texting them, you try asking friends and family, and everyone that you know tells you, I do not know where that person is, right? You can try to annul that marriage, especially if it's a case where the marriage was never consummated, right? You can argue, okay, we never consummated the marriage. I would like to annul it because I would like to start afresh. I do not want this marriage, which was a waste of time, on my record. So I am going to move forward and get an annulment. This is going to erase this completely, and it's going to be like it never existed. And that's why the annulment is so important, because it's going to take something back to a time when you were never married. So, for instance, if you were married in 2018, that annulment is going to raise that completely, and you would have been single from 2018 and onward. It takes it all the way back, and the law says it never existed. You never married that person. And I personally don't know why somebody would not want an annulment in certain circumstances, because I think it's most appropriate in certain circumstances to erase, especially there are cases where I've seen people have text messages between each other, telling each other we were only roommates. We never had a relationship. We never had a marriage. We were just roommates. Now, if you have such clear and convincing evidence and you can present that to a court, there's not much you have to do to convince a court that there was never any marriage, because both parties are admitting in text messages that, hey, we didn't had a marriage. We were never married. We were just roommates. And I just would like this to be erased off of the record and make it seem as it never even existed to begin with. So in that case where you erase it like that, then you can just go and tell people like, hey, I was never married. If you never had a marriage before, you could just say you were never married. And that makes it very good for a single woman. When she actually meets the right person again, then her record is clean. It makes it good also for a man. If he wants to move on and he had a previous marriage or he never married before, he can say, hey, look, I've never been married before. I've been single. And I've had relationships with people. We've lived together, but we have never actually entered into a marriage. I don't foresee anybody should try to oppose any type of annulment on the relationship, especially, in this day and age. You take a look at the situation, the things that are happening, and I've seen this so many times. When the woman comes, I was shocked at how alarming this is. The woman comes, especially in the Black community. I wasn't expecting this, because I've seen on the other side of, other ethnicity, on the other side of the fence with other ethnicity, you look at it and it's the man that does everything in the household. The man, he pays all the bills, he takes care of his wife, he knows every single thing that happens in his household. On the other hand, when you look at our community, you see the woman is the masculine energy. The woman is paying the bills. The woman is taking care of the house. The woman is doing so much things, and the man is forever absent. He's hardly there. Or if he's there, you barely see him present. He doesn't even know what happens in the household. And in a lot of those cases, I've seen the parties are actually roommates. Like, there's no consummation of the marriage. There's no nothing. So they're just actually I would say, they're just coexisting together under the same roof. And those are textbook classic cases where, the marriage should be annulled. I'm not talking about the marriages that's been around for 20 something years and the people are just roommates. I'm talking about the ones that are just new. They're under 10 years. The party never consummated. They're living in separate rooms in the same house. And for whatever the reasons, what one of the party or whoever choose to get married for, that reason had nothing to do with them living together as husband and wife and cohabiting as a happy, healthy family. In those cases, that marriage need to be annulled. It just have to be annulled. There's just no other way to continue in a situation like that. And then let's talk a little bit about the situation I talk about, where you definitely have the woman doing this, the woman doing that, the woman doing everything. In that case, you annul it, and each party go their separate ways, and whatever the parties acquired on their own, the parties get to keep their own assets. There's a lot of straw man I've seen in relationships. And when I say straw man, you find like two people use one of the party use the other one's credit to acquire asset, but the other party is not contributing to the asset. For instance, I've seen cases with husband and wives. The husband, most times, believe it or not, most time I see it, is the man is not contributing anything. The man constantly have his outside relationships. He have his own life with somebody else outside, and he's just there as a roommate in the house. And this happens quite frequently. He has no intentions of being in a happy relationship with that woman that he has at home, but he's out there, he's enjoying life in in another relationship, and he has the woman in the house building, taking care of everything. But then when it's time to go their separate ways, he is trying to ask for something that he never contributed or didn't even care at all about. And I think a lot of people have got to wake up and recognize, in that case, you need, as a woman, to annul that marriage, because we have cases where men are committing fraud, Black men committing fraud on Black women, and that type of those men temperature need to get checked, because we cannot have that type of behavior in our community, but it is happening. So I've had people call me all the way from Guyana, believe it or not, guys. And they said, they're living with this man. The man isn't working. The man has not contributed anything to the home. He's a drunkard. He drinks alcohol. He squanders everything that he earns. He does not put anything into the home. And all she wants to do is get out. That is another textbook case for annulment. If she can establish that that man lacked the capacity because he's a drunk, he lacked mental capacity, he's incapable of consenting to that marriage, or it could have been at the time they got married, that he lacked the capacity because he was a drunk since at the time they got married. It cannot be that he became a drunk after they got married. So in that case, that woman need to annul that marriage, get it annulled. walk away from it, and that's the end of that situation right there. So I think people need to understand that this is one of the most effective method or effective tool of getting yourself out of a situation you just think that it's not beneficial to you. Number one, it's not giving you anything, and you're carrying the burden, you're carrying the load, while the other party is scotch free walking around with never ever contributing anything towards the relationship. And they were never in a marriage with you, because why? They lived separate lives, they kept their finances separate, they kept everything separate, and it's just a situation whereby you, the woman, or whoever it is carrying the weight. And those are classic cases where you must sit with an attorney and said, hey, can we consider annulling this relationship? Is there a way for me annulling? Like in the case, like I said earlier, the woman who called all the way from Guyana and she said, this man is a drunk. She needs to seriously have a conversation with the attorney and say, well, hey, can I get this marriage annulled? Because, at the time when I entered this marriage with this man, I didn't know this man had an alcohol addiction. And we know in Guyana and in a lot of the Caribbean country, alcohol addiction is one of the most serious concerns. We don't look at it as addiction. We just look at it, oh, he like drinking, but it's an addiction. Let's be for real. I mean, we don't have facilities. I don't know if now they have any facility in Guyana, but as far as I recall, there was no facility in Guyana to assist people in detoxing or cleansing up themselves and getting back on their feet if it's discovered that they have an addiction to alcohol. They didn't even call it addiction at one point. They just say he's a drunker, she's a drunker, but it was in essence an addiction. You understand? So if you discover after you get into this marriage that this person actually have an addiction, and this person is not necessarily a person who is functioning on their own, but they had this problem before you even married them, you can go back now and annul that marriage, because that's a classic textbook reason of why you should annul that marriage, because that person had a addiction and you didn't know, you just didn't know. So the thing is, you don't have to just limit your scope to saying, okay, my scope is limited to the fact that we never consummated the marriage. Addiction is an illness. You can use that, you can argue that, and see if a court listen to your argument and entertain you and say, well, okay, I will allow you to annul this marriage. Because one of the most important method of annulment, which is fraud, is the burden is so high, it's so difficult to prove fraud. Unless it's clear and it's glaring on the face of it, then it's hard. And a glaring form of fraud, like I said in my video last week, if you didn't see that, you could go look at it and see all the grounds. I've listed numerous grounds on which you can annul a marriage, unless the fraud is glaring. For instance, I'll tell you one of the ways of fraud is glaring. Fraud is glaring if somebody say, hey, they see you, they like you, and they say, hey, can we get married? They date you for a little while and you were deceived. You didn't understand what was happening, but the person finessed you into a marriage. You got into the marriage. When you get into the marriage, right, the person already have somebody else that they're with, that they're never leaving, right? The person has a second household and the person comes with you, right? And they tell you they want to have children with you. They want to build this life together with you. And the whole time when they're telling you these things, they have another household, let's say back in Guyana or right in the United States. And their sole purpose for being with you is to get that green card, right? Sole purpose. They just want a green card. They don't care about anything else. So they come and they kept maintaining a separate household. They have a whole wife. They don't intend to be with you. When you ask them, you tell them, hey, I want to have children. And before you got married to them, you told them you were interested in children. They give you the idea or the impression that they too are interested in children. But after the marriage, you discover that they're not interested in trying to have children with you. They're not interested in doing anything with you. They're just there and you find their phone and there's text messages between them and the actual woman that they're in a relationship with, telling the woman that they'll be together soon, that as soon as they get the green card, they will divorce the wife that they're with and they will come back and marry that person and they'll be together as a family. And I never intended to be in this relationship, but I just need this green card. Believe it or not, guys, there's a situation exactly like that that I can tell you about. I had a client who was in a relationship with a guy, right? They were planning to get married. They wanted to have a family together. But rather than one of them getting the green card first and then the other one gets it off of the partner, what happened is the woman ended up marrying somebody else, right? And then the man, instead of him waiting on her or whatever, because they really intended to be with each other, he went and he married another woman. And while he was in that relationship with that woman, he was really with the woman that he actually wanted to be with. And then she found out, and he kept telling her, the marriage is not even legit. I don't intend to stay with this woman. He's in the bed, sleeping in the bed with a woman under the same roof. But he continues to tell his wife that, hey, I am not going to stay, not his wife, his girl, the woman that he was with on the outside, that I intend to be with you and you and I will be together eventually. So eventually the situation blew out of proportion. The woman that he was with found out, but I'm pretty sure in that case he ended up with the green card, because the woman that he was with, even though she found out that he was actually in a relationship with somebody else, I don't believe she moved to annul that marriage. That one, the man never had the intent of being in a relationship with the woman that he was married to. He only did it for one purpose, to get a green card. So once he get that green card, his goal was to divorce and to move on. And we've seen this so many times, that people just get into a relationship for specific things that they're trying to accomplish, and they don't care about the person that they're hurting. They just care that, hey, I would like to get this green card, or I would like to accomplish X or Y or Z. And that is what my goal is. I will work towards my goal and I will not focus on anything else. I will not focus on who gets hurt in the way. So that's why in those situations like those, people should move to annul. Don't move to divorce. Move to annul, because the fraud is so glaringly clear on the face that the court doesn't have to dig very far for you to establish that this relationship was fraudulent. There are other cases that I can list to you where the fraud is glaring, but like, you have got to understand, when you get into anything, think about what you're doing next. Think about how you're going to deal with it before you actually get into it. And if some people deliberately agree to marry people from other countries, even though they know there's a risk involved, like you living in the state of New York, you living in the United States, I always advise my clients, well, people, that if you're going to bring somebody from another country, just be careful, especially with your assets. A lot of times people, they bring broke people from other countries and they marry them so that they can have a break here, and then they try to help them get a job, go back to school, whatever. And I've seen it in the reverse, where it worked out for the woman, but most of the times it doesn't work out for the woman when she does this. A man, it happens to men also, but not to the extent I've seen it happen to women. I know this one case where the woman went, she brought the man from Guyana, he came to the United States, he went to school, he got a good job, and he was taking care of his household. He was paying the rent. They bought a house together. He was paying the mortgage. He was pretty much a good guy in terms of taking care of his family, but he was just terrible in terms of being faithful to her. He had multiple women. He was cheating. He was having extramarital affairs. And these are the things that led to a breakdown in the relationship between the two parties. When the relationship broke down, they ended up filing for divorce. He filed for divorce. And when he filed for the divorce, because he was considered the money spouse, the wife wasn't working for much money. The wife was a minimum wage earner, which means she was barely getting 20 something thousand dollars a year. And that's not enough in the state of New York. And what ended up happening is he ended up being the one that had to give her a substantial amount of money, which worked out to her advantage because she was entitled to maintenance and she was entitled to other things that he ended up paying. It never works out for the man in those cases where he's the one earning the money. He's the income earner, you know. But like I said, textbook classic case for annulment are the ones that I described, involving intent, involving fraud. And I've already talked about the other ones. And I said you got to be careful in the cases of where, you know, your partner was going to file for you to get the green card. This was going to be a family-based petition. You have to be careful with those. You don't want to have too many marriages. And as we know, a lot of times people enter into marriage, the marriage don't work out. Don't be too quick to file a divorce. Think about it carefully first and determine whether or not you needed to just do an annulment before you rush to a divorce, and then you land yourself into trouble. All right. So think about that very carefully before you actually make a move, because it might be a case where, you know, like I said, you might have just need to annul before you divorce. Divorce might not be appropriate because then you have to go marry another person, and that green card is going to be based on the second marriage, but USCIS will see that you had a first marriage and that marriage didn't work, but it ended by divorce. And sometimes the party would have already filed the I-130 petition for the divorce, for the green card, so that USCIS knows that you already did that and you were in this previous marriage. So you got to be careful with that. Think about what you're doing. If you're not sure, as always, you can call my office, call any attorney. You could see my number is across the screen there, 718-877-3100. If you or somebody you know is in need of legal advice on any situation as I discuss here today in this program, give me a call. And also just note there's a lot of people with mental issues, mental health crisis, mental health problems, which causes them to lack the necessary capacity. I know a case with a young lady who entered into a form of marriage with a man. She has severe PTSD. And I think then she later found out that this man is a sex offender. And he was trying to, you know, do certain things to a minor child. That is another classic case of where the family should maybe apply for guardianship for her and then annul that marriage, because clearly that's a situation that warrants an annulment. Okay. Guys, thank you again for joining me this Saturday for the Law and You. If you have any questions or there's anything in particular you would like me to discuss relating to the areas of law that I practice, you always send me a message. Send me a message on Messenger. I'll see a message. And whatever topic or issue you want me to discuss here on the show, just let me know and we will be discussing it. Next week, my program is going to be just a little bit shorter because I have somewhere that I'm going to be next week, but I'm going to make sure that I bring to you the Law and You every single Saturday. Like I promised, we'll be discussing various legal issues, and anything you would like to be discussed here, just send me a message on Messenger, or you can just call the office and say, hey, Miss Washington, I would like for you to discuss X or Y, because I know quite a few people are experiencing the same issue. So I would like to have more information be placed out there. Anyway, guys, I hope you understand when you should annul a marriage and when you should not annul a marriage. I hope this program was helpful. And if you have somebody you know that this would help, just share the link, share the live with them, so that as many people as view this program, they'll get the message out. We'll get the message out to them. Thank you once again for joining me, and I will be back here again next week for the Law and You at 4 p.m. sharp. Thank you, guys. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.